I'm Jeff Snyder. I run Snyderphonics, which is a musical instrument design company. My main instrument that I sell is called the Manta. It's a touch controller keyboard sort of instrument. Originally designed to work with a computer, so it has USB out. And I just recently came out with a module called the MantaMate. That is a module that for Eurorack that lets you plug in the Manta and get CV out of it. Turns the Manta into a touch keyboard and sequencer. I originally made the Manta because there were some things I wanted that didn't exist at the time in commercial instruments. So one thing is I was really interested in just having really fast touch control of stuff, but I'm not really interested in the kind of like, well, at the time I designed this, the iPad didn't exist yet, but I'm not really interested in the pictures under glass kind of paradigm of touch control, and I really wanted to be able to feel the difference between the sensors, one sensor and the next. So it's got kind of a metal surface that you can touch. It's a bunch of discrete sensors, each of which knows how much surface area you're covering on it. So you can get, it's basically polyphonic aftertouch kind of controller. It's got 48 keys that they're in this kind of hexagonal grid array, which right now I have it sort of set up with the LEDs to kind of show that it can be like a normal kind of piano keyboard in 3 octaves, but there's other ways you could lay it out too. Could be just all chromatic, could be fifths this way, thirds this way, that kind of thing. I care a lot about design, like visual design as well, and the feel of an instrument, and I wanted something that to me felt sort of classic and like a traditional instrument in a lot of ways, but gave me this kind of really direct control over electronic sound, and didn't feel like that existed. So, it's why it's got kind of a wood body and the metal touch case. I'm kind of feeling a little bit like 60s meets 15th century kind of vibe. So with a computer, you can plug it in over USB, and if you use Max MSP, there's a Max object for it. Super Collider has a Quark for it. You can also just run a program in the background that turns it into MIDI. And in that case, it's a fully polyphonic controller that just sends data about the current status of every single sensor. So you can use it as basically like fully polyphonic aftertouch kind of thing. Or you can write your own kind of software in Max or Super Collider to make it do whatever you want. People have done all sorts of crazy stuff with it, like turn it into a lighting controller or a live sampler controller, things like that. But myself, I'm a modular synthesizer player as a live performer, so I really wanted to make it also communicate with my synth. So recently I came out with the MantaMate, which allows you to interface with a modular synthesizer with it. But then there's the issue of really this thing doesn't necessarily know anything about notes or whatever. It's just sending how much surface area is covered on every sensor out as a big list of data. So the module has all the intelligence of like figuring out how to turn that into usable voltages that you can use in a modular synth. So one of the ways I have it working is kind of a traditional keyboard style interface where you can play notes and it plays it like a keyboard. It can have monophonic handling like right now, or it has 12 CV outputs and you can go up to 4-note polyphony, which I don't have patched up right now on my modular, but if you wanted to, you could play 4-note chords with it. It gives you for each kind of keyboard style instrument, it gives you a pitch, it gives you a gate for on-off, and it gives you a CV for this surface area, and then it gives you two CVs out from the sliders. And you can basically combine that stuff together to get some pretty expressive playing. One of the ways that I tend to use it, I tend to flip back and forth relatively quickly between using it in this sequencer mode, this keyboard mode that I just showed, and also in a sequencer mode, which is basically you can kind of go through these little option settings here to change what kind of instrument it is. And if I change it from keyboard mode to sequencer mode, then here, let me simplify this a little bit. I can get rid of some stuff. You can basically treat it as kind of a step sequencer. And let me make let me just start out by kind of making everything a clear sequence. So it starts with nothing here. I can make 8 steps here, and then I can set them each to be a different pitch. So for instance, let's make this be like a minor 7 arpeggio going up. So I'm saying this one's C, this one's C flat, this one's G, right? And right now I've got my filter down a little bit. And you can basically set, one nice thing about it compared to a lot of step sequencers is you can really quickly just activate steps on and off with touch, or you can just, you know, really quickly swipe across to get it. In addition to having, here, let me speed this up a little. In addition to having a pitch for every output, you also have, if you go in and edit each stage, you can also set a CV out for each output. Let me see what I got. So for instance, like now I just kind of took each one and changed around some of the timbral characteristics, and you have 4 CV outputs possible for each stage. And then how many steps can you do? You can do up to 32 actually. You can also change the step length for every step. So every step could be individually can be set to weight different lengths, so that one's like a little longer than the others. I'll limit it back to just a couple things so it's clearer. But like if I go on here, I can make this one be 2 long or 3 long, right? And you can have rests, which can make your pattern a little more interesting. Yeah, so that's been pretty powerful. It's also got weird little extra crazy things, like you can mutate patterns that you make by, there's like a button here. Well, first, you can also save the patterns that you make, which is kind of cool. So if I like this little sequence I made, I can touch this left option menu and say I'm going to record something, and then I can put that right here by placing that, and then now I can go to one of my other saved sequences. This is one I started with earlier and saved a little bit ago. And then I can come back and get back to that one really fast. And then if you like that, you can also save it as a global preset on the device itself, and it'll remember it when you power off and power back on. As I mentioned, you can kind of mutate some stuff. So like if you hit this button, it just sort of subtly changes a few things. So I'll hit it a few times. Yeah. That's kind of nice. So I like that. I'm going to save that here. And now I can move back and forth between the first one and the second one. Yeah. And I end up using that a lot live, where I basically find some cool patterns, set myself up to be able to change back and forth quickly. One of the coolest things is that I'm only using 6 of the 12 outputs right now for this sequence. So I've actually built the thing so that there's basically always 2 instruments available in the Manta, and both of those instruments can be either a sequencer or a keyboard or a trigger sequencer, which is like a drum kind of sequencer. So you can also make it be kind of a direct thing where it'll just send gates out when you touch the keys or whatever. But for now, it's like I've got another sequence possible on the other page. So let's make the other instrument into a sequencer as well. And I can make this one, it's doing another voice. And it's basically independent from the other sequence. It can be a different number of steps if I want. Here, let me, I'm going to change the octave so we can hear it better. Yeah, so you can kind of hear, right now they're both 8 steps long, but if I wanted, I could make this one be 6 long, and I can make the other one be, here. And it doesn't care. They share a clock, but they don't necessarily have to have the same number of steps. So this is $775, and that's $425 US dollars. If you get them both together, it's $1,100 is the list for the package. So you can find out more at Snyderphonics.com. You can find all the info about them, and it's available, distributed by Schneider's Laden in Europe and Analog Haven in the US, and a couple other smaller stores as well.